I volunteered to go in the Wrens because my two friends had also volunteered, but I, being the youngest, I was the last to go in. So I joined up in May 44. And then on D-Day, I was in sick bay at New College, and that was the day I woke up early and heard all these, put the radio on and heard all these funny messages, coded messages to the people in France, all the agents, telling them that something was happening. And of course, a couple of hours later, we knew it was D-Day. So after that, I'd missed the WT course because I was in sick bay. So they said, well, you can't do another course here because they're moving up north. So I said, well, I don't want to do that. So they said, well, you can do a pay writer's course. So I said, oh, all right then. So they sent us up to on Highgate Hill, we had a Rennery, and up on the top was a school, and that's where we did the the pay writers course. I came top of the class and qualified for the higher rate. Anyhow, this one day, I opened the front door. We were just leaving to walk up the hill to continue our course, and I heard this funny noise in the sky, and I looked up, and this funny thing cut out, and then it went down plonk onto Hampstead Heath. We stood there, and the blast hit us. But seeing as I was holding on to the door, it passed me by and hit all the girls behind. They were all on the floor. So I shut the door and started helping to pick them up. That was quite the beginning of these awful things called doodlebugs. And they persisted. After that, we finished the course, and I went down to Chatham, and a couple of days later, I was sent up to HMS Beehive, which was Felixstowe. But these things followed us everywhere. They were the bane of our lives for ages, and it wasn't until, well, I forget how long it was before they stopped. Not until the armies had got well into France and Germany did they stop. I mean, at night you'd hear at Felixstowe, you'd hear them all coming, and then you'd hear all the gunfire from Langard Point where the army was trying to shoot them down. And then that became mundane then, there's so many of them. Then we had to sort about getting to work, And so in the morning, we'd go outside. The transport would come to pick us up to take us to the base. We had to climb on this transport. I suppose it was a Bedford there with a rope on, so we had to climb up. Us in short skirts. We weren't in trousers then. We weren't boom defence or torpedo Wrens who wore trousers. And I used to say, morning, sir, morning, sir. We sit down there. And opposite us was Peter Scott and Peter Dickens, who at that time were at HMS Beehive. There was lots of Americans around about, and they used to invite us to dances and that. They sent a transport over to take us to dances, and we did get an invitation to go to a concert. And I forget how many American lorries took us there, but we were invited to the airship hangar at Bedford. And there was the Glenn Miller concert. In the Glenn Miller story, you see it in this big hangar, because I only saw it again like a week before, I think 10 days ago, and the concert there. But in the film, it showed you only Americans, but it wasn't. We were there, all Wrens, WAFs and everybody else had been invited. And it was a wonderful concert. And of course, it wasn't many days before he disappeared. Then there was the people I met. I had one day this lad came in. He was up for one of the other bases further north. I think he probably from Mantis, which I think was Lowestoft. And he'd taken a chip off his finger. Well, they hadn't got a sick bay up there, so they had to send him down to Beehive, because that had been an Air Force base before, where my husband's father had been stationed. And so he came in and said, can I have a railway warrant to Temple Meads, please? I looked at him. Being an Essex girl, I didn't know where Temple Meads was. So I said, where's that? And he said, oh, Bristol. So I made him out his railway warrant, asked him his name, and he said, Trevor Stanford. So later on, I go into the other office. I said to Kay, have you got a brother in the Navy? And she said, no, he's in the Air Force. I said, because I've just had a Trevor Stanford in here. She said, oh. Anyhow, later on, it transpired it was Russ Conway. That was him in the Royal Navy in 1944. That's how he was when he came to see me and asked me for the railway warrant. On VE Day, I was at Newmarket Races with my dad. And of course, I was only there a day or so. And then 2 or 3, I was back at Felixstowe. And then the German E-boats came into surrender. And somewhere in the house, I've got a picture of the captain, German captain, surrendering. All the boats are coming in. And I got it autographed round with the crew of RML 547. But can I find it?
How did that feel when you saw those boats coming in?
Oh, everybody was there. It was quite something. And then we had all these E-boats came in, and then of course we had to take all the ammunition off them. So one of them said to me, from the 547, said to me, do you want to come out and drop the ammunition? So off I went. 2 or 3 of us went with them. And when we got out to the middle of the big deep in the North Sea there, we started chucking the ammunition over. There was, everything we could find taken off these boats. Then I suddenly felt it. I turned green. They say when you're seasick, you turn green. Well, I turned green. And then I realised I was never going to be a proper sailor. Now, when you joined up, you were given a demob number. And you had to wait until, if you were in a job, you had to wait until your demob number came up. And some of the people who were in jobs that weren't necessary, they were demobbed early. But the rest of us who were in specific jobs had to stay on until our demob number came up. So that went on. After we paid off Felixstowe, I went down back to Chatham, and then I was sent out to Sheerness Dockyard, HMS Wildfire 3. And there, by then, my leading rate had come up. So I was a leading Wren then. And I was still in the pay office, and we were working. We had a lot of submarines and other people there then. And then we said we could do a PO's course. So I think he was a warrant officer was in charge, and he taught us all the ins and outs of being petty officers and what have you. And we all took our exam. We passed. And to the warrant officer's horror, the next day, an AFO, an Admiralty Fleet order, came out saying anybody who had qualified for rank could be rated up immediately. So it meant that we took the exam one day and we were rated up to petty officers the next day. So consequently, there was too many petty officers there. So I was sent up to London, and I had an office on the embankment. And we had a house, we had a wrennery just off the embankment. And I used to do Royal RNR, Royal Naval Reserve officers' pay there. And I did that, I suppose, for a few months there until it was my turn to be demobbed. And then when I was due to be demobbed, I was back in sick bay again, wasn't I? So that delayed me a few more days, because if you're in sick bay, you have to be so many days afterwards. You have to be sort of before you can go back on duty. And so then it was right at the end of 46, I think, before I came out. We enjoyed life to the best of our ability at the time, because you didn't know what the future held. You didn't know if you'd be there the next day. When I was still at Felixstowe, a crew came back. They wanted to go on leave that day. Their boat had come back. They'd been over in France, I think it was somewhere near off Holland, for 5 months. And I said to them, where's your chitties then? How much pay did you draw? Oh, we didn't draw any pay while we were away. We bartered cigarettes. So we worked all the pay out, and I knocked on the paymaster. Was 2 offices, and the paymaster was in between, and his secretary this side of him. And I knocked on the partition. We had a little slit in the wall to speak to in the door. And I said, how much money has the pay commander got in the safe? Because we're going to need a lot of money. Oh no, we haven't got that amount in. He went into several £100, which was a lot of money. So I said, you'll have to wait till tomorrow, because we haven't got enough money. Anyhow, it was nearly a riot amongst these matelots standing there waiting to go on leave after all this time. So I said, I've got a I think her name was Marion. I banged on the... I said, Marion, will you tell the master that I've got a very disgruntled lot of matlows here? And he thought about it. And he phoned the bank manager and asked him if he'd open the bank. So they went and collected the money, and I was able to pay them and give them their railway warrants, and off they went. But that was quite a thing. Yeah. I used to go to the Wrens reunions, and at one reunion I saw what was I think it was, I don't know if I was second officer or something, who was in charge of us, the Wrenery and that, running it. And she said to me, Pam, how did they used to get in and out at night? And I looked at her. I said, the pantry window. And when the girls wanted to stay out, they used to come round the back of the Wrenery. We had a hotel next to us. The Cliff Hotel was there. That's where most of the officers were. And some of us were in the Wrenery there. There was another Wrenery further down along the front. She didn't know how they got in and out. And girls would come round the back of there and they'd bang on the window and somebody would go and let them in.
And how did you meet your husband?
I was selling flags outside the cafe on the corner, and the Queen's Cinema was there. And he said, oh, come and have a cup of coffee, Pam. He took me into the Queen's upstairs. They had a cafe, and we had a cup of coffee. And Vera Lynn was sitting at the other table at the time, so you could almost date that to when she was at the Hippodrome. Anyhow, when it got to just June, end of May, we knew there was no way we could have a wedding. So we went to the registry office. I went and booked the wedding, and we had just had the two witnesses. And somebody lent us a car, somebody gave us petrol coupons, and we went only over the weekend, and then we went back home. I left a letter for Mum and Dad to tell them what I was doing, and my brother picked it up and hid it till the next day. So my brothers had one or two things to answer for.
Do you remember how it felt when you were first told that Britain was going to war?
We felt it for a long time before. People repairing. People say that, Munich, when did Chamberlain went and sort of appeased Hitler for a year. But that gave us that year to get ready. And I'd tell you who the inspiration was to us all during the war, and that was Churchill. He was the man. I mean, if you read some of his speeches, he inspired us, kept us going. And he said, we shall never surrender. That was one of his words. And I think it kept us going. People joined. The women went into factories. Dad became LDV, Local Defence Volunteers, and then they turned them into the Home Guard. Dad was that. But they had to keep all the lorries going and that, getting supplies everywhere. Everybody pulled together to do their very best. Because we knew if we didn't, I think if the worst had come, if the Germans had invaded, I think Dad would have shot me. I think that was the feeling. They weren't going to let us girls be treated in the same way as the Germans had treated all the people as they'd gone through, and all the other countries. We had the victory parade. That was something to see. And of course, by that time, I was at Sheerness, and I think a lot of us were given leave, and we were on the Mall, sitting on the Duke of somebody's statue, and we were sitting on the base so we could see everything. And to see all those massed troops and different troops, I think there was Montgomery, Eisenhower and everybody in that parade. The most inspiring thing was to see the pipers, with their kilts. It was just the relief.
So can you tell me a bit about your journey, your time with the Royal Naval Association?
I got involved with the RNA. Over the years, I was chairman, secretary, treasurer. And time I'd finished, we had 110 members when I started. We were down to about 50 when I finished. And then they made me a life member of the RNA. The certificates on the wall in the hall. To see over the years, that 30 odd years, to see, the numbers go down, and all the funerals and that we went to.
Did it mean a lot to have that network?
Oh, yes.
They're hugely supportive. They
Oh,
phone,
yes.
they call. Dad's funeral, they came with.
Max was president of the local RAFA group. So between us, with me being chairman of him and he being president there, we had a lot of get-togethers. We had a very enjoyable time, I think, as members. We were all trying to do something. Being a member of the RNA, it over the years, it gave me a lot of pleasure to do it. It gave me something to do, something to devote my time to. It gave me great pleasure over the years to be involved with the RNA.